There's no choice but to fight in the streets. Whatever the consequences, the only way to end it is with a counter-revolutionary process with all the consequences.
Welcome, confidentials. This is a breaking news update about the situation happening in Spain, an extreme case of national emergency. After 8 years of Pedro Sanchez's government, more than half a dozen judges are investigating the president's inner circle. His wife, brother, all are in the dock. Some of his closest collaborators are in prison. And to that is added the investigation for 7 crimes against Jose Luis Rodriguez Zapatero. What is going to happen? What can civil society do to counteract this corrupt drift? We know that Sanchez wants to stay in power forever and we have to prevent it. But how? Only €2.03 a month protect yourself with CyberGhost VPN. Gentlemen, as we reported in recent days, what the press had revealed has now been discovered. Sanchez created a dirty tricks operation to attack judges, journalists, prosecutors, civil guards, police officers, anyone who investigated his circle. Meanwhile, Rodriguez Zapatero was accumulating jewels in his safe and is being investigated by the United States, allegedly for money laundering of drug trafficking assets from Venezuela. No one knows what might happen in a few days, but we need to know where we stand. And from time to time, no one helps me with that more than a mind, a writer, a journalist, a friend. Mr. Eduardo Garcia Serrano, how are you?
Well, I'm as well as I see you, my dearest Castillon Confidential. I see you looking great, really great.
The evil we fight keeps us going because there's nothing else left to say.
Yes, exactly. There is no better way of living than the struggle. The struggle for truth, for justice.
Don Eduardo, did you imagine so much about the people around Sanchez and Zapatero?
No. Well, my dear Albert, it's not about whether I imagine more or less of it, right? It's just that I, forgive my presumption, know the history of the PSOE very well. The PSOE's more than century-old history. I know that this may surprise many of our followers, because for the past 50 years, the PSOE has worked hard to spread an image of itself. Let's remember Zapatero saying that being a socialist means having very little and giving everything, right? An image that's a mix between St. Francis of Assisi and Father Damien. The PSOE is a criminal organization. The PSOE is the Mafia. The difference between the Spanish Mafia, meaning the PSOE, and the Italian Mafia, the birthplace of the Mafia in Italy, is that in Italy, the Mafia is illegal, right? It permeates everything, but it's illegal. There are anti-mafia prosecutors, there are state organizations dedicated to pursuing organized crime, and from time to time, they organize major trials against the Mafia, right? That end up taking down the Mafia bosses of the moment, who are immediately replaced by others. What Mafia? The Mafia in Italy is illegal. In Spain, it's legal. In Spain, the Mafia is legal. As long as the PSOE is legal, not only is it legal, but it also has political blessings, institutional and financial support from the Spanish state. The Spanish state finances the Mafia that is the PSOE. Let's not fool ourselves. We're seeing a lot of things. Yes, it's true. I definitely believe it's true. It can't be denied, thanks among other things to the immense, immeasurable work of the Civil Guard of the UCO. But let's not forget that on the judicial level, the judges have started moving their asses under their robes. At the request of the United States, the French Prosecutor's Office, and the Swiss Prosecutor's Office. If it hadn't been for these 3 international entities, the United States, France, and Switzerland, I really doubt it. that the Spanish justice system, which is for the most part kneeling before political power and dragging their robes through the dust of the road, as the current president of the Constitutional Court once said, would have lifted a single finger. But, oh my friend, as you pointed out, the United States comes into play, the all-powerful DEA gets involved, right? The organization, the most important American agency in the fight against drug trafficking worldwide. And the DEA knows, as you know, dear Albert, and as I know, as anyone with a bit of curiosity and interest knows, that drug trafficking is the main business of certain states, among them Venezuela, that narco-terrorism is what finances the mafia. That's why the DEA has Jose Luis Rodriguez Zapatero as its main target. And Jose Luis Rodriguez Zapatero is the PSOE. He is the PSOE in all its fullness.
It's curious. On that phone belonging to the now wanted owner of Plus Ultra, Rodolfo Reyes, there's a WhatsApp message. They know that Zapatero is going to give them the 53 million bailout, and he writes to a Plus Ultra partner, Zapatero's body is going to support us. And the other one replies, long live the left, damn it. In other words, getting 53 million in public money to plug holes in an absolutely illegal financing scheme, to send that money to tax havens. For them, that's long live the left, damn it, which is like saying, among ourselves, we have to support each other because we get everything. And it's still like that to this day, right? In Spain, none of those who were involved in it, and the Council of Ministers was full, none of them have stepped down.
No one has, and they won't either. Let's see, the bailout of Plus Ultra is a joint decision of the Council of Ministers. Everyone who was part of that Council of Ministers that signed, that approved the bailout of that company, which is nothing more than the mule that brings the drugs from Venezuela, from Caracas to Madrid, and from Madrid to Caracas, and it carries whatever is needed. What? Because that was the sole and exclusive purpose of that company, Plus Ultra, with 4 rented planes that flew less than an ostrich to bring what? Well, now we know. Cocaine, foreign currency to launder money, and to bring in jewelry, which is another form of payment, right? Jose Luis Rodriguez Zapatero, another form of payment in kind. And then the entire Council of Ministers approves a bailout of 53 million euros for that company on the grounds that it's a strategic company. A company with 4 leased planes, not owned, but leased, and that represents 0.03% of Spanish air traffic. It turns out it's a strategic company. Damn. Come on, 0.03% of Spanish air traffic. Plus Ultra is a strategic company. Plus Ultra is the dealer that transported from Caracas to Madrid, and from Madrid to Caracas, everything illegal that could fit in the saddlebags of the PSOE and the Maduro regime. That had to be kept active, at their expense, of course, from the pockets of the Spanish people.
Do you think they signed that bailout out of ignorance or because they got a cut?
I'm convinced that they took part in splitting the loot. Absolutely convinced. The proof is that Pablo Iglesias is still around to this day. In Spain today, he's practically a nobody. He's a nobody who owns a tavern. That's his cover. But Pablo Iglesias spends more time in Mexico and Venezuela than in Madrid. Pablo Iglesias just appeared on Mexican television. That's right, and they introduced him Well, as if he were Pericles himself or von Bismarck. On Mexican television as a champion of the international left who comes to help Mexico, as the announcer said. I saw this myself a week ago. The announcer said, "From the motherland, yeah."
Yeah.
And he answered that since in Spain the left is already well established, his political mission is to establish the left in Latin America, as he calls it. And in that dance, Pablo Iglesias is acting as the conductor coming from old Europe, something that fascinates both Hispanic Americans and North Americans. He comes from old Europe, and that already gives him an aura of wisdom and effectiveness.
What are we like? Sanchez announced this summer that he is going to take 5 weeks of vacation. And I don't know if it's a vacation or if he's planning to run away. What do you think?
I think that in these 5 weeks, by the way, there isn't a single Spanish worker from the king down except Sanchez, who gets to enjoy 5 straight weeks of vacation in the summer. That's to start with and to continue. And I think he's going to use that time to prepare his strategy to stay in power. Because as the legal proceedings start nipping at his heels and closing in on his inner circle, which is his family, his mentally deficient brother and his wife or whatever she is, he needs to shield himself more and more, and he's going to use those 5 weeks to protect himself in the short term. And when I use the term short term, I'm thinking about the year 2027 and the upcoming elections. He's going to weave the plot to govern again, starting in 27. And for that, he has done something utterly despicable, which is the grandchildren's law, by virtue of which the grandchildren, great-grandchildren, even great-great-grandchildren of Spaniards who crossed the Atlantic for whatever reason, many years ago, they will have the right to vote in Spain. We're talking, you see, about 2.5 million, 2,800,000 people that without the slightest connection to Spain, other than the last name they have, who have never known Spain, who know nothing about Spain, are going to have the right to vote. Let's say that out of those 2,800,000, only 10% vote. 280,000 votes. Those 280,000 votes can change the outcome of an election. And that's his move, to plan the manipulation of the Spanish electoral roll to stay in power. And what has mainly encouraged him to carry out this outrageous act of tampering with the Spanish electoral roll, the result of the last regional elections in Andalusia. Indeed, they lost at the polls, at the ballot box they lost, but the overseas vote, the vote of Andalusians living abroad, was won mostly by the PSOE. Do you extrapolate that result to a general election with the grandchildren law, with the vote of illegally regularized immigrants, especially the Muslims from the Maghreb who were mentioned the other day, whom the CIS said would mostly vote for the PSOE? What do you think? To whom, if not? That guarantees him to stay in Moncloa forever. That's why in each and every one of his public appearances, he says that execution dice que estará en el poder from power 27 and beyond, and even further. That's right, it's true.
This, Mr. Eduardo, is clear to all of us, and I don't see any decisive action from the opposition to put a stop to it. A few hours ago, we reported on this program that the electoral census software was commissioned to a company owned by a former PSOE congressman. I mean, things that are shameful, right? Things that are outrageous. Where is the strong opposition that stands up and says they're trying to commit electoral fraud here? I don't see it.
The strong opposition you're asking for, dear Albert, is looking for the good PSOE vote. We're tired of hearing Feiju ask for the good PSOE vote to make a deal with that good PSOE vote. We just came out of an election in Andalusia. His candidate and winner in that election, Moreno Bonilla, spent the whole campaign appealing to the good PSOE. We have an opposition led by the dumbest, most foolish, and most cowardly party in the history of Spain, which is the PP. So the PP is convinced that the PSOE, which is the Mafia, but not just now. For 145 years since its founding, it has been the Mafia. PP convinced that there is a good PSOE. And we have to find that PSOE. So to establish a sort of pact between social democracy and the Popular Party that brings Feiju to power. In that way, not getting their hands dirty, not getting involved by having to make a pact with Vox, with the far right, with the Nazis, with the fascists. Because the Popular Party has adopted that view of Vox. And they're really scared, because they're a bunch of cowards, democratic cowards, those damn little PP guys. They're seeking the good PSOE to avoid dealing with Vox. Because in the regions, it's manageable. We can't make a deal, it doesn't go beyond the natural borders, the natural limits of those regions, and well, that's where it stays. But in the national government, that's a different story. And so they're looking for the good PSOE. That's why they don't speak out. They don't denounce the truly perverse maneuver, truly perverse of disruption through the Ley de Nietos and the massive regularization of illegal immigrants. So that they vote for the Socialist Party. Because the PP, that cowardly party, thinks that denouncing this is a wholesale rejection of the system. And they don't have the balls, politically speaking, to carry out that amendment against the entire system. At least to change the system from within.
I'm being told that after the summer, Sanchez is going to start a coup d'etat. He will spread rumors that with the help of some judges and prosecutors, the right and far right want to carry out a legitimate coup d'etat against his government. And he's looking for confrontation in the streets. For example, he's speeding up the decriminalization of insults against the regulations to the king, the army, the police, the judges, and religious sentiments. Harassment of ETA victims is no longer even a crime. They're looking for that confrontation in the streets. How should those of us who know who he is, what he does, and are peaceful people act? Because going out into the street, yes, but when we go out, we don't even throw a piece of paper on the ground. How should we act?
Well, look, you might be surprised by what I'm going to tell you. But there comes a time in every society, in every nation, in every community, when there's no other choice but to do what's necessary. Well, to protest with all the consequences. With all the consequences, peaceful demonstrations. Ladies who go to the demonstration with the ABC newspaper under their arm, the Spanish flag, and who don't even leave a tissue on the ground. And then they go back to have an aperitif. In Vienna, Chaplins, or in any other high-class place, those demonstrations don't lead to anything. They don't lead to anything. There comes a time when people are deprived of their freedom, their future is taken away from them, and efforts are made to shackle them. Of course, mercifully with falsely democratic arguments, but wrapped in the silk paper of invocations to democracy. There is no choice but to fight in the streets, with all the consequences. Because only those counter-revolutionary processes, and I mean counter-revolutionary, are capable of ending the revolutionary process. Well, it's true that it's being supplied in small doses, but constantly, which we are suffering from, that revolutionary process can only be ended by a counter-revolutionary process with all the consequences. And I think I'm explaining myself clearly enough, with all the consequences.
Is Mr. Eduardo calling for a May 2nd uprising?
A May 2nd uprising, exactly. A May 2nd uprising. There's no other way. You've heard me say this countless times because we've talked about it 1,000 times, you and I, both on air and off air, that in this process we're immersed in of undermining the Spanish nation, of ending the Spanish nation, and therefore ending freedom, because freedom and nation are concepts that go together. This process can only be fought with a counter-revolutionary process. But of course, if the political forces that are in that opposition and that send the ladies who go to Sunday Mass to Plaza de Colón every 3 or 4 months, I repeat, with the ABC under their arm and then off to have an aperitif in Vienna, chaplains, they are not able to understand this or to face the necessary solution. We won't get anywhere. We won't get anywhere. We are on the verge of the year 31. There are just over 5 years left. In the year 31, the centenary of the proclamation of the First of the Second Republic, if we don't stop it before then, everything will come to an end. Everything. Todo. Are they going to take advantage of that centenary? That's why Pedro Sanchez says until 27 and beyond, until 31, to put an end to the revolutionary process they started when Zapatero came to power, and with his alliance with the communists from Podemos, Sumar, and the separatists from Chapela and Barretina. They're all involved in that process. And the king, well, in that role he has assigned to himself, giving up his constitutional role of arbitration and mediation, because the idea that the king has next to no say is constitutionally false. It's false. The king has a role of arbitration and mediation. And we all like soccer. A referee for a match. A referee calls a penalty. A referee sends off a player or as many as he deems necessary from the field. He even ejects the team's coach, sending him to the stands or locker room. That's a referee. The king, in his role of mediation and arbitration, could very well do so with the constitution in hand. When Pedro Sanchez comes before him for the first time to tell him, to ask him to royally support his government, Frankenstein, the first of them, with Pablo Iglesias, he could have simply said, look, Mr. Sanchez, you bring me a government that is supported by the communists who are detested throughout Europe. Detested throughout Europe. In fact, there is a directive from the European Parliament from September 2019 that urges all member nations to treat communist parties exactly the same as the Nazi Party, because it is a party as genocidal and criminal as the Nazi Party, and to remove from all their public squares and street names any reference to any communist leader. But also, moreover, you come forward with the support of the enemies of Spain, of those who want to destroy the Spanish nation. The Catalan separatists and the Basque separatists, as well as the support of ETA. Leave, and in a week, since I am the arbiter, in a week you come back to me with another possible alliance. I won't approve this one. Because the Constitution grants me the role of arbitration and mediation. And from this moment on, I will try to mediate with other political forces so that they support you. But I can't support this government. Well, the king just limited himself to signing. To sign a government supported by those who want to destroy the Spanish nation and by the communists, as well as by the ETA murderers, with their parliamentary wing bill.
That is, if we as civil society don't do something and keep sitting on the couch like barnacles. Will we end up seeing the Third Republic in 2031, just a few years from now, with Sanchez as president?
I have no doubt about it. They learned from their defeat in 1939. They learned a lesson that they are carrying out slowly but surely and executing it magnificently. From 1931 to 1939, in those 8 years, they tried to make Spain the first Bolshevik republic, the first Soviet republic in Southern Europe. That was the goal. And they did it in a brutal way. They acted brutally and it backfired. It went wrong for them. They've learned from Gramsci's theory of entryism, haven't they? And since Franco's death, with the institutionalization of democracy, they've embedded themselves within democracy in order to gradually destroy that democracy. Gradually, without much fanfare, without militiamen in overalls and mousers in the streets killing left and right. And they have done it, as the great Gramsci teaches them, by penetrating the major institutions of the state, stuffing them with their own agents. The justice system, the judiciary, education, the media, and the army. And they've had 50 years to do it. And it's working for them. Because as they have been contaminating, poisoning, infesting the major institutions, the main institutions of the state, the right, which was supposed to oppose that, has been adopting the democratic principles of the left. It has been adopting the philosophical principles of today's left. And therefore it has been developing hang-ups and fears, because the left has wielded the labels fascist and Francoist very effectively. And is the Spanish right afraid that bringing this up will mean that in parliament they will be labeled as Francoist or fascist? From the PSOE bench, from the Sumar bench, from the Podemos bench, and needless to say, from the benches of the Catalan and Basque separatists. And so, because they're very afraid of that, they've gradually started to adopt all the ideological positions that the left has been supplying them with. Meanwhile, they were colonizing the institutions of the state to deliver the final blow, which is the proclamation of that multinational republic of Iberian states. And we'll see that in the year 31,
I've been hearing voices with that message from Sanchez's circle for months now, and the goal is always the same: to destroy this country. How few of us are there who defend it? Just a handful of soldiers, civil guards, prosecutors, journalists. It seems like we're the minority, but I don't think so. I think there are many more of us, right?
yes, there are many more of us, but those many more who support you, who follow you in great numbers, you, journalists like you, the few there are, you can count them on the fingers of a one-handed man. By the way, they end up just sitting on the couch because they're couch potatoes just like us. And do you think, I repeat, that a massive demonstration every 3 or 4 months in Plaza de Colón is enough to show strength? And the left and the separatists are cracking up, and with good reason. And that's proof of the incompetence, the cowardice of the political leadership of that Spain you appeal to, which is the one that follows us. It's everything that wasn't done, even though it could have been done with the overwhelming, near unanimous support of the Spanish people. After the coup d'etat of October 17 in Catalonia. With that moving, wonderful, immeasurable demonstration in Barcelona, which burst the seams of the Catalan city with citizens from all over Spain coming to the Mediterranean Spanish capital, which is Barcelona. to proclaim loud and clear that Catalonia does not belong to Spain. Catalonia is Spain. Well, nothing was done. Nothing was done. Yes, nothing. That was just let go and nothing was done. Like after the massive demonstration following the murder of Miguel Ángel Blanco, what has been achieved? What did that demonstration accomplish? I'll tell you, Albert. Well, what was achieved is that ETA now has a parliamentary seat in the Congress of Deputies on San Jerónimo Street.
Say it.
That's what was achieved. Thanks to whom? To Zapatero.
Don Eduardo, like you, I still have faith in the Spanish people and in their character. Sometimes we strike when no one expects it, and we react in a heroic way. We proved it during the floods in Valencia. No one had to call for all the young people to go there, even though they were blocked from passing. Now is the time perhaps to have a heroic attitude again, like in Valencia. Yes, naturally, and with the support of social networks and alternative media. I still believe that the people in Spain can't have degenerated into barnacles. Let me believe in that.
Look, Albert, yes. The work that you and just a handful of others are doing on social media, in those media outlets, small, persecuted, without funding, without logistical support. If this work that we are doing, which is managing to wake up the Spanish people through social media and from those conventional media outlets, very small, with very little coverage and without logistical support. If that work were being done by the political right in the national parliament, in the city councils, in the autonomous communities, with the same energy as you, thank you. Today we wouldn't be in the situation we're in. But that political opposition is the one that is dedicated to taming that huge mass of Spaniards who don't want to. They don't want Pedro Sánchez to finish his disastrous political project. It's the right wing that tames them.
Thank you.
And that right wing, that political right, if they were in the position you and I are in, they would be funding those media outlets. Well, they're not. They turn their backs on us. They deny us even the basics. Then all we have left is the people, the Spanish people.
I love ending this talk with that phrase. All we have left is the Spanish people. We no longer trust parties, the right, the opposition, or the government, nothing, but we do trust the people. Mr. Eduardo Garcia Serrano, it's always a pleasure to talk with you and start clearing away the fog they keep trying to throw up in front of us. Now we know what the goal is, and we have to achieve it. I count on you in my trench.
Siempre.
Always, dear Albert, I will welcome you from the first moment of greeting.
I think it's a mistake.
Another huge one for you, dear. Goodbye.
Surf safely with CyberGhost. Castillón Confidencial by Albert Castillón.
Castillón Confidencial de Albert Castillón.